Thanks for tuning in to the Proline Handicapping Show on the web. Coming up, Wisconsin versus Marquette, and Texas A&M faces UCLA in college basketball action. Plus, the Ravens take on the Chiefs, and the Colts battle the Jaguars in Sunday's pro schedule. But first, let's hear from our Proline panelists.
Welcome back to Proline. This is our second show for the web. Last week was very successful. We had a lot of people checking in and viewing the show. We got a lot of emails saying how great it was, and we're going to do that each and every week throughout the basketball season, so I want you to come back every week and see that. We got an interesting show this week. We got 2 college basketball games we're going to talk about, a couple pro football games. Now, we're not going to talk about the bowl games, specific bowl games this week, because next week we're going to start into that. We're going to have 3 shows that we're going to cover all the bowls, and all that information's right here, and it's free. So make sure you come back for that. This week, a lot of stuff going on in the college hoops, the pro hoops, and the NFL. Tennessee Titans, they took it out on the Mannings. They beat Mannings back-to-back. I was thankful for that because I had both winners. What did you guys see this week?
Well, we went with you on that on the Titans this past week after learning the hard way that you don't go against Vince Young the week before when he whipped the Giants single-handedly. But, no, we came back with the Titans, and again, it just further emphasizes the fact that what was Tony Dungy thinking, guys, in the offseason. The quote that I talked about on our radio show, Sirius radio show, before the season began, he said, we have to get faster on defense. I was like, really? You're the fastest defensive team out there. You need to get bigger and stronger on defense.
This team, going to the Colts, that's an interesting topic. Here's this great offensive machine that they have, but they can't stop the run.
They score 28 a game and they give up 21. That's going to get you in trouble somewhere.
At some point they're going to get against the team that can throw the ball, can catch the ball, can run the ball, and can defense. Now, they're not going to do that well in the playoffs if they can't shore up that defense, and I don't see how they can do it.
The other thing that I'm wondering about is why is Lovie Smith being so stubborn about Rex Grossman?
Oh, that's
the
horrible.
Quarterback to Chicago. He has been terrible over the last 7 weeks. And you talk about bottoming. The last 7 weeks, guy's got 8 touchdowns, 14 interceptions over the last 7 weeks. That's a lot of bad quarterbacking. And of course, everybody's been joking about his quarterback rating from last weekend's win over the Vikings, 1.3, I believe it was. 1.3.
They covered, Dave.
That's absolutely amazing.
How lucky was I?
That was
100 yards of offense, right? And they get out first down like 20-6, and they win by 10.
34 passing yards?
Yeah.
But you can't do that.
But are you going to tell? Who's going to tell Lovie Smith he's stubborn? Have you seen Lovie Smith?
Yeah.
The thing is, would you make them the favorite? I mean, they got the best record in the NFC, but I wouldn't make them the favorite to get to the Super Bowl out of that conference.
Right now, on a neutral field, under playoff circumstances, under playoff atmosphere, I'd either go with Dallas or Seattle, to tell you the truth, over Chicago, as long as Seattle's healthy on offense. But another big happening in the NFL last week, and this one actually went against me. We had a real nice NFL week, but I went with Denver. I bought into Jay Cutler being a great quarterback in practice and had the great preseason, obviously different than the regular season. But what really threw me in that game, guys, and Jim, if you're watching the game Sunday night, it's probably 10 minutes to go in the game or whatever. It's anybody's ball game. And it's 3rd down and 8 from their own 24, and they ran a dive play off tackle for 2 yards and punted. And I'm like, why would you change from Jake Plummer? I understand he's a bad 3rd down quarterback, but why make the change to a rookie if all you're going to do is punt the ball down early, basically?
Well, first of all, we have to question here you have basically a potential playoff team to begin with, and then you go to a rookie off of Plummer who wins 3 out of every 4 games he's been in the NFL. He's been able to win, which is a remarkable record. Nobody really thinks Plummer is a great quarterback, but he has been efficient and he has been able to win. You make that change, and obviously the kid is nervous. I mean, he's got a lot of talent. There's no question about that. He'll probably be a superstar in years to come. But he's only been around football for pro football for a couple of months, and then you put him out there and you run that kind of play. I got to look at the coaching staff and the decisions of Shanahan and his other coaches as why they did this and then why they ran that. That was a terrible football game for 3 quarters.
Sure.
I mean, even Seattle looked terrible. They had no downfield passing. They were not aggressive. They did not take advantage of the fact that they had a kid back there, put them in the situation. I thought the game was horrible. I thought Seattle looked just as bad as Denver did, even though
that was
they
what
won.
I mentioned last week, that I think that's why Denver did make the change now, because it gives them time.
Yeah.
A couple of games, they can go back to Plummer, and I don't think that would be a real bad thing for them. I don't think that would be a difficult. Well, I don't know if it will or not, but they certainly have that option.
I think
you were getting back to, you were mentioning the NFC, Scott. We were talking about the best teams. Yeah, there are so many good teams in the NFC. It's going to be, listen to this, do you realize that 7 wins might not get you into the playoffs in the NFC this year? Seriously, you might have to win 8 games. Right now you've got 4 squads, or what, 6 and 6?
What's the record of the AFC against the NFC? Does anybody know that stat?
I don't have the exact stat.
No. It's really crazy how one branch of the NFL has gotten so much better.
It's just the way things run in cycles sometimes. The one thing I'm still trying to figure out from the Denver game, what the hell was with that fake field goal at the end of the first half?
That made no sense. That's what I'm saying.
What was that? That was the weirdest play call I've seen in a long time.
There's like 10
because
seconds
there was no time left.
Exactly. Unless they thought Jason Elam couldn't all of a sudden make a 45-yard field goal. They needed to get it closer to the end zone.
I'm thinking, did they think the thing was going to open up and that Elam was going to be able to race to the end zone from that?
You know what I'm wondering about that?
No
I don't know if they ever came out and said anything about it, but the announcers kind of hit on it when they said that they might have had that in the playbook to where if a return team is in a certain look in a certain part of the field, they can basically, the players themselves, call that play themselves.
Shanahan said he called it.
Oh, did he say he called it? I was going to say, if the coach called it, then it's another gaffe.
He may
be
taking the heat off Plummer.
Sure.
Plummer was the guy who flipped the ball over the shoulder to Elam, and then he took off running. Well, I wouldn't call it a sprint. And the thing was, they almost, they could have lost it for the year.
Sure.
Because he yanks his hamstring, then he comes out and kicks the field goal anyway. I mean, the guy's automatic, but. Wow, that was just a bizarre sequence.
How about switching to college for just a second?
Sure.
Colt Brennan, all of a sudden, stock going down. He can't throw the long ball against a good defense.
Yeah.
I mean, did you see him the other two
then
weeks
he
in a row?
short-armed the pass at the end of the game.
Oh, gosh. 2 weeks in a row, he had guys open, and he couldn't throw the long ball against defenses that are a little bit quicker than he saw throughout most of the season of the WAC. Now you've got to take your chances on a guy who has not proven he can throw it deep.
Oh, he's good. He'll have to rectify that situation. He's not coming out this year anyway, I don't think.
Probably not after those 2 games.
Well, also, not exactly the first time we've seen that with a run-and-shoot quarterback.
Oh, of course. Yeah, we see that all the time, every year.
Want to turn the clock back to David Klingler.
Yeah.
He wasn't throwing bombs for all those touchdown passes.
You got a quarterback in the NFL right now that can't throw the long ball, and he's doing very well.
Pennington.
He manages the football game very well.
What a job his coaches do with this team.
Great, and he's a great coach on the field. He's done I mean, they don't have that much talent. Right. They have no running game.
This is probably a team that I think most of us all agreed that they would probably finish last in the division.
Yeah,
I mean, what are they, 6 and 6 now? Yeah.
If they were playing college football, see, it's a good thing they're not, because they wouldn't. They'll make the playoffs in the NFL because it's decided on the field. If they were playing college football, they'd get left out of the BCS because it's all about perception.
We're not going to get into the BCS.
No.
I mean, what do you think about the Florida-Michigan issue?
Oh, I think if you're utilizing, well, let me just throw a couple things out here. Okay, first, a lesson in logic. Now, I do not think Boise State.
So we're going to be logical on the show.
No, I just want to, we're going to. In fact,
change
I'm going
the pace.
Let me use. I'm going to do. I did this on the radio show earlier this week. See if you can follow me here. This is going back to prior to last week's games. All right, you have Team A has 1 loss on the season. Team B doesn't have any losses. They're perfect on the season. Team A's 1 loss was to Team C, and Team B happened to also play Team C, and they beat them by 4 touchdowns. So which team would you rate higher based on that? It would be Team B, right?
Correct.
Team A's USC. Their 1 loss was to Oregon State prior to last week. Boise State played Oregon State. They almost had to put it in the mercy rule in the second half of that football game. It got so one-sided. It's all about, that's the biggest problem with college football. Now, do I think Boise State is better than USC or these other squads? No, I don't. But it's not supposed to matter what you think. It's supposed to be on what you achieve on the field. And teams like Boise State and Rutgers, and even Arkansas for that matter, because they haven't been that good recently or don't come from a big conference or have a really lousy history, as is Rutgers' case, they were screwed before this thing ever started. They could have won all their games, all of them, and they still wouldn't be getting into this thing. They'd have found a reason not to get them in. The whole system is completely broken, and what defies me sense of logic is how some people come out and defend it. What are you looking at?
Well,
how blind are you?
I'd like to throw something into the mix with this. I mean, we all remember the movie Hoosiers.
Yeah.
Okay. And that was, I think, back in '57. I know we weren't born back then.
No.
But we read about it, and we saw the movie. I mean, Hoosiers was a little school, out of Indiana, that really had no place being with the bigger schools. And back in those days, they didn't have these different divisions, 1A, 2A, et cetera. And out of a sudden, this team got the magic, and they go up and they win the state championship. That couldn't happen today because they take those schools and they put them into a different bracket. So you don't get to play, this little school can't go play Michigan or Indiana because they're too small and they can't compete and they can't recruit. When you're talking about these kind of schools, Boise and Rutgers, I mean, they could play Ohio State 100 times. They might once beat them, in my opinion, because they don't play enough good quality competition. Just like you're talking about Hawaii, can't throw deep on a really good, quick defensive back. Well, that's because they don't play those kind of people. They don't see those kind of people. And maybe we have too many Division 1A schools.
Oh, that's
and
fine.
it encompasses teams like that, and we need to break it up a little bit to have them a little bit more fairly treated.
But on the other hand, if you do that, you never get the George Mason scenario, which to me was one of the greatest things I've ever seen in sports. And
it was awesome.
Last year was a great story.
I loved it.
And everybody fell in love with them. It is a shot in the dark. It doesn't happen very often.
No.
And if you want to wait the 20 years for it to happen next time, but
it shows that everybody should have the chance.
It's a little bit different, though, in basketball than it is football. I mean, I think you're right. There's too many
totally.
teams
I understand
in football.
that, but
There's programs.
it's still going to be based on
Check out the
achievement.
recruiting budgets. Like, look at, for instance, I think Texas has the top recruiting budget in college football. Saw an article about a month ago, and it was over $50 million. And then you've got Louisiana Monroe and teams like that are, $10 million at best, if that.
Right.
And so there's never going to be the George Mason in college football that you see in college basketball, because it's such a disparity in talent that's on the field with the number of guys that are playing. So
you need at least, how many players do you need to make up a good football team? I mean, you need the starters on defense and offense. Maybe you can have people going both ways.
The major powers,
but then you have your
guys out there in uniform.
But in football, in basketball, you really only need 5 or 6 guys that just all of a sudden catch the magic.
Get a great player and a bunch of good team players. Yeah.
And I agree with everything you're saying, but you still got to decide it on the field. You can't.
Sure, I agree with that.
This idea of voting to decide who plays in a game. It's like, the Yankees and the Mets were supposed to be the 2 best teams in their leagues this year. They both made the playoffs, so let's just
the
put that in the
BCS
World
would have had
Series.
them in the championship.
Dave,
You're right.
You say it's up to the voters here, but the BCS, another flaw. Last week, Michigan saw something that tells them we can't play and end our regular season too soon. If last week, if USC had won their game, I'll bet you Florida wouldn't have leapfrogged Michigan.
They wouldn't. No.
Well, there's a perfect example. All the voters said, well, they had a big game in the championship contest. Well, they didn't have a big game, first of all. I mean, it was a nip and tuck. It was a 3 or 4 point game to what?
Which one are you talking about?
The Florida game. Yeah. They didn't do anything to leapfrog over Michigan in that respect.
No, they did one thing. They have better drawing power when the TV viewers watch and when they buy commercial spots on the game itself. They found that
if you don't
play.
I think it was more.
I'm going to tell you what they said.
The voters didn't want to see a rematch.
That's what I was just going to say. That's
what
we're
nothing
saying.
To do with
it was all about
do,
that.
Do you guys think that the SEC is as good as everybody says it is?
Absolutely not. It's good, but it's
I
not.
think it's the
as
best
strong.
conference, but
Well,
I think the Pac-10, for instance, is underrated.
I think the Big Ten is horrible. I think Michigan is way overrated, but I'd like to see them be able to prove that on the field. I think their defense is way overrated.
Michigan
I should
already
say.
did kind of prove it because they, look, everybody's talking about this great game against Ohio State. It was a good football game. Ohio State outplayed them by a big margin.
Oh,
They
yeah.
outplayed them
Michigan's
by
defense.
150
I
yards.
mean, Michigan's
it was an
defense.
11-point game at the
They
end.
caught a break by playing in a horrible conference. I thought all year. I mean, I'm going to bring something up from last year. This same defense basically goes into the Alamo Bowl and gets knocked around by an offense that was completely one-dimensional in the Alamo Bowl. Yeah. And then they get to skate through this super easy schedule in their conference. I think the SEC is probably the toughest to travel in week after week because everywhere you go is so freaking intense. in the SEC.
Yeah, they have
it might not be
top to bottom. They're they're much stronger.
Boy, wherever you go, there's it seems like there's 75,000 people that are right on top of you. There's just almost a rivalry in every game every week, and that's what makes it so tough. I'm not crazy about the offenses in the SEC. I think it's a bit antiquated at
so
times.
quick.
They're lightning quick. Yeah,
it's tough to score on those.
Sure.
We're going to talk about bowls next week, but you see anything else in the NFL that stands out? We saw Arizona win a road game, which is quite unusual. We talked about Seattle a little bit. They came back with their. How about the Green Bay Packers? How bad have they become? I mean, this is just. They were down, what, 31-0 at home against the Jets, which is not that big of a scoring club. I mean, just totally embarrassed. Brett Favre done?
Well, he should have probably hung it up 2 seasons ago.
Right.
But the bottom line is, I mean, he's really got nothing around him. I mean, his offensive line stinks on ice half the time, and then look at the secondary getting punished the way they have it the last few games. I mean, he should have hung it up just for his own sake. They just don't have the team, and I don't like the play calling coming out of that team, coming out of that sideline.
Can we stop overrating the Carolina Panthers? Yeah. Please, enough already. Jake Delhomme has returned to being an NFL Europe quarterback. He's been terrible. He's not an elite quarterback, and he's going back to. He's good enough to play in the NFL, obviously, but he's not a great starting quarterback. The offense is not good on this football team. Defense is very tough, but they didn't make big plays against Jeff Garcia on Monday night, did they?
The Philadelphia fans, though, which I'm from Philadelphia, but they were brutal on Garcia. I mean, they booed him at every chance. He ends up he's a tough character.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I like the guy. I mean, he's not the most talented guy in the world, but he's tough.
Exactly.
And he comes out and he wins the game. But they booed him every time he came out of the huddle.
You know what? Can I mention before we move on, just real quick about college basketball officiating? You guys want to talk about that for just a second?
Oh, I love talking about officiating.
Great. I knew you did. I had a feeling. But I'm watching the game the other night between A&M and LSU, and this kind of falls in line with BCS and just the way college Division I athletics are done in general. You look at a team like Texas A&M who plays real in-your-shirt defense, and in the Big 12, the officiating allows you to really be physical. And then you go against another team on their floor in another conference where you can't even basically look at another guy without a personal foul being called on you, and their game is completely changed because of it. So either the governing body, I'm not even going to call them by their 4-letter name, but the governing body of college sports has to get together and change the way they officiate in physical conferences like the Big 12, or change the way they officiate outside of conferences like that.
The Big Ten has really been a physical.
Well, let me finish for just a second. Did you watch a game against LSU?
Yes.
First 2 minutes of the game, what were there? 6 personal fouls called on A&M? They're out of their game right now. I mean, I know Glenn Davis had a lot to do with that win. The bottom line was, within 2 to 3 minutes, A&M's in foul trouble.
But here's the thing. The officials won't call what they're supposed to anyway. And the perfect example is this. And watch any college basketball game. The team that's behind in the last minute is intentionally fouling on every possession. There's a rule in the books on intentional fouling. They never call it. In fact, I was stunned watching UNLV and Hawaii on Tuesday night. And with just a couple of seconds to go in the game, a Hawaii guy grabbed the UNLV guy by the jersey, just grabbed him by the jersey, and they actually called an intentional foul.
Really?
And Riley Wallace went nuts. And I don't blame him in a sense, even though it was clearly an intentional foul. It's like you never call it. Why don't they call that? It's in the rules. It's simple enough. It's obvious they're intentional fouls. And maybe if they started calling them, we could actually get through a game without the last 2 minutes having to take 30 minutes to play.
That's always been a problem in college basketball because of that, all that fouling at the end.
As
far as this LSU game is concerned, where were the officials from?
They weren't from the Big 12. I'll have to find out where they were from.
Yeah,
but
because
that's a totally different style.
When you're playing an interconference kind of game like that, the officials should be balanced or should be from another conference because the bias to the home team is obviously some of these people live in the same town. They know the kids. I mean, they may not be doing anything wrong, but they sure don't have their heart in fairness.
Over the last 10 years, I've seen Big Ten schools, when it came to the big dance, really getting punished for that same problem. The Big 12 physical, the Big 10 has always been the most physical basketball conference.
Oh,
and
I don't know about
see,
that.
I
come
would
on.
say, well, I'm
Oh,
not saying year in, year out.
Wait a minute.
Oh,
Wait a
Dave,
minute.
well, I'm not going to even argue the point with you, but the
Glenn, the Big
point,
East, the Big East.
Well, the Big East
the
is very
Big East
physical.
is absolutely.
Well,
there is nothing more physical
Pittsburgh
than the
certainly.
Big East. Okay.
Pittsburgh certainly.
Georgetown,
until Howell left, and now all of a sudden
those guys could
UCLA
have been
plays
arrested
defense.
at Georgetown. Years ago for the stuff they were doing on
Regardless,
the court.
the point I'm trying to make is that the Big Ten would go into the NCAA tournament and they'd get in foul trouble. All their major players would get in foul trouble right away because they're playing their same game, but they're getting fouls called that weren't called.
I always
in
thought, you know what?
conference
I'm going to be honest with you. I always thought it was because they were slower.
You think
I'm serious. I'm dead serious. Those teams play a slow. I mean, all Gene Katie's teams. Gene Katie never had a guy who could run the 100 in less than 15 seconds. Okay, they were bulls. But they just got outspeeded.
So Michigan's Fab Five were a bunch of slow guys. That's why they couldn't make it in the NBA.
That team didn't.
Yeah.
They didn't have any problems with getting into foul trouble though, because they had the speed.
Speaking of the Big East, did you see Iverson got in trouble for missing a bowling get together with the team the other night? I'm like, that's a good thing when Iverson wants to stay out of a bowling alley. I mean,
We're going to come right back, and we're going to talk about some college basketball. Wisconsin at Marquette.
Coming up next, our panel discusses the game between Wisconsin and Marquette from Saturday's college hoop schedule. But first, Glenn McGrew, who nailed another big Proline offer last week with his Dog of the Year winner on the Falcons and NBA Game of the Month on the Kings, has a 3-game offer featuring his non-conference Game of the Year.
You know, folks, this season just keeps getting better and better and better. Last week, I nailed another Proline offer. My Pro Football Dog of the Year, the Atlanta Falcons, never worried when they're down 14-0. And my pro basketball game of the month was Sacramento. They almost a straight up win over San Antonio, taking 8 or 9 points. And now, off a stunning 8-1 afternoon last Saturday in college hoops, I'm going to release my non-conference game of the year in college basketball. You're going to get it along with 2 personal service plays, too. It's all available on my $20 power play line on Saturday. The number's 1-900-226-0410. That's my non-conference game of the year plus 2 personal service plays, all 3 games, just $20 on my power play line. Now, speaking of college basketball, of course, I spent about 5 or 6 years in Milwaukee, and one of my fondest memories was watching Al McGuire with the tears running down his eyes. Marquette wins the national championship against North Carolina, and we got a pretty good basketball game between state rivals this weekend.
We do, and usually Wisconsin's favored in this game, but not this time. Marquette's going to probably be, 6-point favorite,
6,
maybe.
7, something like that.
Wisconsin has a good defense. Bo Ryan's defense is very strong, 57 points a game. I think they give up. The problem is they're a stronger home team than they are a road team, and Marquette. Deep team, 20-win seasons, I think the last 7 or 8 years, Final Four in 2003. Good squad, not a great squad. Can they cover as a favorite?
There's a big edge. There's a big edge for Wisconsin up front. They got a great front line, but there's an even bigger edge for Marquette with that 3-guard offense. They've got 3 really fine players, but I think the key to this is if Wisconsin's 2 guards can withstand the pressure, because Marquette's going to put a lot on you. I tell you what, they went up against Duke, forced 19 turnovers, 18 more against Texas Tech. So, but if the Badgers can handle that pressure, I think they stay within the numbers.
Here's the problem: is the Marquette's committing more turnovers than they're forcing. They've been giving up the ball a lot. They got 155 turnovers and 147 assists as of earlier this week. Not a very good ratio for a strong team. And the Flowers kid for Wisconsin, this kid's a good point guard. I mean, he doesn't get much of the publicity on this team because he's not a scorer, but he is a solid fundamental player. He's got a fabulous assist-to-turnover ratio. He's got a bunch of steals in the year. Controls the pace, distributes the ball well. Bo Ryan's got a really good team. I think Wisconsin's a better team than Marquette. They got the one loss to Missouri State, and that's a really good team out of that always tough Missouri Valley Conference. In that game, they were way, way down and came roaring back and almost won the game anyway. I'm not as sold on Marquette, and I've had a couple of nice plays on Marquette recently, but I'm probably going to take Wisconsin if I can get enough points here. I think Marquette's a little overrated, to tell you the truth.
College basketball comes down to the numbers. I mean, it's you don't have as many ups and downs like you do in the pros, cycles of 4 games and 5 nights in the road, stuff like that. It really comes down to the numbers. I'm a math guy when it comes to college basketball. and it all comes down to where the number falls. If you're looking at 6, I probably take it. If you're looking at 4, I leave it alone. You know, it's that kind of a situation for me.
I'm more.
But in no case do I lay it unless it's like a deuce.
In non-conference action, I probably lay more points than I do in conference play. I'm more of a dog guy when it comes to conference games. But in this particular game, I think you guys kind of hit it on the head. I think it's a mismatch in favor of Marquette because Wisconsin hasn't faced the heat that they're going to get from this 3-guard rotation that they're going to see out of Marquette. Dominic James might be the Big East player of the year when it's all said and done this season. Right now they are struggling as far as an assist-to-turnover ratio. I think they turned that around. They struggled at times early in the season last year. But when you talk about what they did when they dallied in the valley, so to speak, Wisconsin, they go into the Missouri Valley. They go up against an ultra-quick backcourt, athletic. Look what happens. They were clocked early in that game. They did have a nice comeback. They didn't give up, and they made it respectable. I think the same thing happens here. You know, I'm not crazy about having to lay a half dozen points if that's what we have to do in this game. But for me, it's the way to go because if you watch Wisconsin this season, when they're trying to play against good, solid, quick, athletic guards, they can't come out and take them because those guys are driving right past them, getting to the hole, either making layups or dishing off. I think that's what happens here in this game.
The guards do set the tempo for the game, and if the guys down below don't get a chance to get the ball in the right situations, they really can't play.
Well, that's what
I keep getting back to the Duke game. I mean, Paulus and Nelson, the 2 guards for Duke, I mean, between them they had 11 turnovers. The club as a whole had 19. But having said that, I still lean to the points and the Badgers.
Yeah, it's a good rivalry matchup in any event.
Sure.
And 2 excellent coaches.
We really can't forget that this is a rivalry
sure
game.
is.
It means a lot to these kids.
Yeah,
and you're right, and Dave said 2 really
Bo
good
Ryan
coaches.
and Green, these are top of the game, top of the line coaches, and they'll both have their teams ready. It's going to be a good basketball game.
Speaking of a great basketball game, Texas A&M against UCLA in California. That's going to be a tough basketball game. We're going to have more on that when we come right back.
In a moment, 2 top 10 teams square off as UCLA takes on Texas A&M. But first, we'll hear from Smokin' Dave Koken, who is off a tremendous week of winners that included a sweep on his pro and college basketball games of the week, plus easy winners on both his college basketball game of the month with Providence and college football game of the month with New Mexico State, and has a great free offer for this weekend.
You know, it doesn't happen that often, but when the bad week occurs, you've got to talk about it. You can't just make believe it didn't happen. Fortunately, I don't have to talk about that right now because I'm telling you what, it is smooth sailing at this point. Everything is going right for me, and I'm just one of my spectacular grooves right now. And you can't stay hot forever, but I got to tell you something. When I am hot, you do want to ride with me. There's no question about that. Last week, college football game of the month, New Mexico State crushes Louisiana Tech. College basketball game of the month, Providence College destroys the University of Rhode Island. Hit both my games of the week in basketball, had a real good Sunday in pro football. I am on fire right now, and I think you ought to take advantage because I've got a free offer today. 3 real strong college basketball games, including my first conference game of the year, and they're all completely free of charge. Just call the toll-free number that you're looking at on the screen right now, 1-800-547-4224. Going to get you 3-0 day in college basketball. Strike while the iron is hot, and it is red hot right now. Speaking of red hot, UCLA kind of out of the gate in impressive fashion, and Texas A&M was unbeaten until the other night.
Well, talk about jumping from the frying pan into the fire. Texas A&M goes to LSU. We talked about it earlier with the officiating in that game. Really took Texas A&M out of the game. Now they're going out to California to play one of the toughest teams in the country. Had a great year last year. They're jumped, like you said, out of the gate real strong. I mean, UCLA at home generally is a powerhouse against the number as well, 12-6, I think. But they're really not at home, as Glenn pointed out earlier. The number in the game, maybe 8 or 9?
Yeah, it could be that high. I tell you, it's going to be a war of the wills, I think, in this contest. You're going to have 2 teams, one A&M that's going to want to slow it down to a crawl. On the other hand, UCLA wants to run and run and run some more. The problem right now for A&M is AC Law. He's lost his shot.
Yep.
It suddenly just disappeared. It was against Pacific. He was 2 for 6. And then earlier this week, that game against A&M, he went 1 of 11 from the field. And I tell you what, this guy is such a key to this ball club. he's going to have to come back with a pretty big game. I have a question for you guys. You don't even know. The point guard play for UCLA, it looked like it could be a problem when Farmer went into the NBA, but this Collison kid has been tremendous. Is he related to the Collison at Kansas? Does anybody know?
That I don't know. I do know one thing.
Boys played great ball.
The two kids who were hurt last year have come back completely healthy. Aflala and Ship are outstanding. UCLA's got one of those most skewed stats in the country, by the way. They're only shooting 60% from the foul line, which you think is, wow, that's awful, and you really want to be careful about laying points with a team that shoots 60% from the line. But it's actually almost all one guy who's ruined their foul shooting percentage. Mata is 7 for 30 on the year. I mean, Shaquille O'Neal looks at his shooting free throws and goes, geez, that guy sucks. He's not a bad player. He's not a great offensive player, but he's a good rebounder. But he has become a liability that they have to get out of there at the end of the game if it's close. And that can impact their flow. But the one thing I like about this team, I think that they've come out this year after how well they did last year, but just missing winning the whole ball of wax, really committed. And they're a very intense basketball team virtually every game. I mean, they're not even taking the lightweights lightly.
Well, they got a lot of killer instinct. And that loss last year in that big game at the end of the season, it really helped them because it really focused them on what their potential is for this year.
It's too bad we don't have any coaching in this game because the players are outstanding. I mean, boy, Howland and Gillespie. You know, I think these coaches that get these jobs to try to rebuild a program, they must really despise Billy Gillespie because it took him about 3 days to turn the A&M basketball program from one of the worst in the country, as far as I was concerned, into a top 10 college basketball program. Amazing how fast he did it. Didn't hurt to have AC Law coming in and guys like that. Joseph Jones is an excellent player. In fact, he may not be voted the MVP of the team at the end of the season or the Big 12 Player of the Year, but I'll tell you what, if there was a role for Best Supporting Actor for Texas A&M, it would go to Joseph Jones. They got the big European.
Kavaliauskas?
Yeah, exactly.
He's pretty
I'm
good.
glad you said it. But anyway, they got the big European who had a good game against LSU the other night. As you guys mentioned, you know, we talked about the referee, the officiating a little bit in the start of the game, took him out of their contest. Also, as Glenn mentioned, though, AC Law has got to get back on track. But what I was hoping to do is I had A&M on Tuesday night, and that was our only loss on Tuesday, by the way, shameless plug. But we had A&M. We were hoping to get a win there, an outright win, so we could come back and get real nice value with the UCLA Bruins here. Unfortunately, we're not going to get that good value because they did lose by about 10 points to the LSU Tigers. Now I think we're getting good value on the underdog in this game because people are easy to jump ship when it comes to a program like A&M that they don't know a lot about. I will tell a story about this, though, with the Aggies. Not too long ago, it's only been about maybe 10 to 12 days ago, happened to spot a future on A&M at 35-1. Now, that's probably where teams should be when they're 5th or 6th in the nation, but they're never 35-1. And, you know, the Gaming Control Board, who likes to look into a lot of strange numbers and things that go on in the state out here, they ought to look into some of these futures because, boy, do they rip us off when it comes to some of these futures. But the bottom line is 35-1 is probably where it should have been. But most spots had them 8 to 10-1 in that neighborhood. We jumped out at 35-1. The place we got them at 35-1 immediately took it off the board, put it back up the next day at 3.5-1. So somebody was asleep at the wheel. But in this particular game, I just don't think we're going to get value anymore, unfortunately, with the UCLA Bruins here.
And as far as futures go, 35-1 is an okay price. When they were at 35-1, it's not great. But
it's great, relatively speaking, though.
The problem is that the numbers on futures are so bad. To me, I think you're foolish to bet them. I really mean that.
Oh, I don't think when you get a 35-1 on a top 5 team.
That was good, but you never normally.
You don't see that anymore.
Right.
That's the problem. You've seen.
You actually were getting the right price.
Yeah,
exactly.
You thought it was a bargain because you never see those kind of numbers.
Well, that's just like last year. Dave and I had 35-40-1 on UCLA that we found in mid-December. Guess what? A week later, it was what, 5-1?
Oh yeah,
something like that. It was ridiculous. So you can really look around and you can scour and take the fine.
But it's for the most part, it's terrible. Oh, yeah, I won't mention the name of the chain, but this was last year. I never did check their pro football futures this year. Last year, they had the 49ers, who were perceived to be the worst team in the league going into last season, 25-1 to win the Super Bowl.
Oh yeah,
it's
ridiculous.
And that should be close probably to But 5,000 to 1.
Oh, I mean, it's just absolute robbery, and that's just a tip for those of you who are out there. If you can find a rare situation.
You know what really made it bad? You know what really made it bad?
That's
if
one
you can
thing,
find
otherwise
that,
forget the futures.
and you're not going to find it now because once you hit something like that, if you're lucky enough to be the one that got it, everybody else sees what happened and immediately adjusts their numbers, and that's what happened. What happened as far as futures were concerned that really destroyed any value was a few years ago when the Rams won the Super Bowl. Yeah. There's a place down here on the Strip. And I tell you what, the sportsbook director over there, I love him. He's a great guy. Not only that, he's one of the Sharpies that is young, but he's got that old school mentality. He's a good handicapper, too.
Yes, he is.
Who left a huge lineup on the St. Louis Rams throughout almost the entire season, if I remember. It was probably week 14 or 15 when he finally made a big adjustment. He got beat up big time when the Rams won the Super Bowl. He lost his gig. And that's why a lot of these guys now, they say, well, you know, you can't blame them. They don't want to lose their job, and they make these ridiculous futures now, and that had a lot to do with it.
The two worst in memory, the Twins, when they won the World Series back around, what was it, 89 or something like that, and then the Rams that year, they hurt some folks bad, and they decided, you know what, we're not going to give everybody a chance to clean us out again.
But I don't want the folks out there to think you mentioned about this being a bad thing. These futures, there are situations. I mean, Scott, you've done really well betting over and under win totals.
Oh, that's different.
That's a different thing entirely. So I don't want them to think.
Here's the thing. Also, when you can find like what I do with A&M, do I think they're the best team in college basketball? Yeah. No. Do I think they've got a shot to make it to the Final Four? Definitely. Are they going to win the national championship? Probably not. But I've got great hedge money now.
Yeah.
And when I get into the tournament, I've got
That's
a lot of money to play with.
You get down to the final 8.
Exactly.
You got a lot going for you.
Yeah. By the way, I like the under in this game. I never gave a pick on this game. I think A&M really slows it down. They have to do that to stay in this game. I think this is a game with maybe 115 points scored, and that should get you the under.
Well, when I was talking about the game in the beginning, I said that A&M wants to slow it down. UCLA wants to run. They're so athletically gifted. But that's not to give you the impression that UCLA can't play a low-scoring game. I mean, you mentioned Howland. This guy is one of the best in the business overall as a coach, but he really teaches defense. I mean, you just got to go back to his previous gig at Pittsburgh. It was just unbelievable. He set the tone, and that Panther team's been remarkable defensively for years and years now. But UCLA can play great defense, and I think you're right, Dave. We'll see what the number comes out on the total, but it might be a good play.
Well, bottom line is the value, as Scott said, is out the favorite because what happened with A&M the other day, the line jumps a point or two or maybe even 3. So if you like UCLA, you're going to be laying more, and now you're going to be up against a team that wants to come back and make up for what happened the other night. So you have to watch that kind of thing because the reaction of the betting public and the bookmakers always either add value or take value away from your potential play. We're going to talk about some NFL games. We've got Baltimore KC, and we've got Indy and the Jags coming up in the next 2 segments, so come right back.
Coming up next, Sunday football between the Ravens and the Chiefs. But first, we'll hear from Scott Spreitzer, who went 7-2 with his pro football sides last week, including his 3-team parlay of the year, as well as his championship game of the year with Oklahoma, and is featuring a huge basketball and football package this weekend.
All right, well, welcome back, folks. We're going to talk some pro football in just a bit. The Ravens taking on the Chiefs, but let's talk about winning action in all sports. That's what we've been doing, especially since the 1st of November at Smash Mouth Sports. I mean, last week, another great weekend. We finish up the college football regular season with a 5-2 mark. We hit our Big 12 championship game of the year on the Oklahoma Sooners over the Nebraska Cornhuskers. In the pros, a 7-2 week with our sides that included our Game of the Month winner last Thursday night with the Cincinnati Bengals over Baltimore. Wrapped it up big on Monday night with the Eagles. College basketball, a perfect Saturday, 5-0-1. That included our 4th straight main event winner with DePaul outright over the Kansas Jayhawks. We also hit our TKO Game of the Month with Wichita State outright over Syracuse. The winning continues today. We are going to release 2 huge plays in college basketball. It's my 2-team college basketball parlay of the year. And by the way, last week we hit our 3-team parlay of the year in pro football. You won't want to miss out. 2-team parlay of the year in college basketball. You will also receive a Game of the Month in pro football and a code that gets my college football bowls free of charge. It's all available right now at 1-900-868-3350. Just $25. 900-868-3350. Guys, does Baltimore come back from the debacle last Thursday when they looked horrible on offense against the Cincinnati Bengals?
Well, they've been looking horrible on offense all year long. It's not their offense that wins their football games. And I know that Billick, when he changed He fired Jim Fassel,
Yeah.
Fassel, and he started calling the plays. They started scoring more points, but they don't have a lot of offensive talent. They've got a quarterback that's on the downside of a great career. The running back is probably on the downside of a great career. The offensive line's a little bit weaker than it was in the past, and the wide receivers are marginal at best. They don't have a great offense. They have a great defense. Now they're going to go to a place, Kansas City, who blew a big game last week at Cleveland, and Kansas City has a remarkable record at home, especially late in the season. This team covers games at home. They're a very, very tough football team at home, especially, but they have a good defense as well. So when I look at the matchups between defenses and offenses, I like the game to go under the total.
That's a good point, Jim. Larry Johnson right now, maybe the best running back in the NFL if you X out the San Diego city. The rust has kind of come off Trent Green now. He's been in the lineup, played a couple of ball games. You mentioned the Kansas City defense. I mean, it's not in a league with Chicago's or Baltimore's. They're giving up like 17, 18 points a game at home this year, which is pretty good when you score a lot of points. I think this is a good spot for them. And the line at about 3 in this contest, I bring that up because when you get a low enough line, 3 or less, you can start looking at teams' records, not necessarily against the spread, but simply straight up. And this Baltimore team has 2 wins in their last 19 road games against clubs with a winning record. And Kansas City, I had it down here, Kansas City 14-2 straight up their last 16 home games. I mean, at 3, I've got to lay it.
I hate getting to the must-win scenarios because that's not, the old adage, must win is not necessarily will win.
No.
But if Baltimore loses, it's not the worst thing in the world for them. They're still in really good shape in the division. Kansas City absolutely cannot afford this loss. They have to win this game because it's very congested in that playoff chase in the AFC. Now, they're not going to catch the Chargers for first place in the division, so they got to keep winning to get to the wild card, which is also not going to be easy. A second straight loss here would be extremely damaging to Kansas City. I think the Ravens may also have, not to say they can't get back to that level, but I think they may have peaked already and could go into a little bit of a dip here for 2 or 3 weeks. So I would go with the Chiefs in this football game. It's not going to be a strong play for me because I do have an awful lot of regard for this Baltimore defense, but I think Kansas City's the right side in this game.
I forgot Seattle, Denver, and San Diego have all come in and played at Arrowhead. We used to say that was one of the toughest places to play. They beat all 3 of those squads this year. 3 very good football teams.
Herman Edwards has done a good job. By the way, I also want to mention our free pick phone. You're looking at the number on the screen right now, and just in case you don't have your eye on it and you're walking around someplace in the house, I'll yell it out. 1-888-208-6377. Another big weekend last weekend, 3-0-1 with the group here on Saturday and Sunday. You actually get 9 plays each week on that line on a recorded message. 1 each Monday through Friday, 2 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday. Some good free offers as well. Everything's on tape. Make sure and call the number 1-888-208-6377.
We got another big NFL game coming up. We got the Indianapolis Colts, who are also coming off a loss, going to the Jaguars, who manhandled Miami last week. And this is one of those games. We've got a lot to talk about. Come right back.
In a moment, the Colts, who take on the Jaguars this Sunday. But first, world champion handicapper Jim Feist, who won 71% of his college football games of the year releases this season, is making available 5 big plays over the next 2 days, absolutely free of charge, including his Eastern Conference Game of the Year and Saturday's NBA.
We got the Indianapolis Colts and the Jags coming right up, but I want to tell you about last weekend. I had 69% of my all of my football releases, actually, including Inner Circle Game of the Year on New Mexico State and the Platinum Game of the Month on the Titans straight up over the Colts. This weekend I got 2 days of winners, and it's absolutely free. Here's what I have on Saturday. Eastern Conference Game of the Year in the NBA, the College Blowout of the Month, and a big personal service as well. That's 3 big games on Saturday. And on Sunday, a pro doubleheader, including my Pro Shocker of the Month. 5 big games absolutely free. Now listen to this number. Awesome phone number. 1-877-JIM-FEIST. Whoa, that's a pretty good phone number. 1-877-JIM-FEIST. That's 546-3347 for 5 big games absolutely free. As far as this game is concerned, Indy and with Manning, this team took off. They have one of the best records in football. We talked about it earlier. They can't stop the run. That puts a lot of pressure on the offense, puts a lot of pressure on Manning to perform at a high level each and every week. They're a great team, no question about it. Manning is probably the best quarterback in the league. But when you have deficiencies, the other teams find a way to take advantage of it. The Jags at home, they have a good running game. They can run the ball for 150, maybe even 200 yards against this Colt defense. And what that does is it keeps Manning on the bench. And on the bench, he has never thrown a touchdown pass, believe me. So you keep him on the bench, you frustrate the offense, and this Garrard has done very well for the Jags. I mean, they're a pretty good home team. I like the Jags in this game.
That's a good angle. Anybody got a pen? I'm going to write that down. In games that Peyton Manning has been on the bench and not thrown a touchdown, they are. But I like that. But, here's the thing. If Indy was going to get it done playing against a team the second time in a season, a team that ran the ball up and down the field on them the first time they met, and they got a fortunate close win, which is what Indy did against Tennessee the first time, 14-13, wouldn't they have come out last week and shut down the Tennessee Titans on the road if they were going to do it? I mean, 219 yards rushing by the Titans, and that was smash-mouth football. That's what it was all about. They just popped them in the chin and never looked back. The bottom line was they did the same thing in the Dome, and so did Jacksonville. Jacksonville ran up and down the field against Indianapolis the first time they met. Real close game, real hard-fought game. Indy won 21-14. What makes me think now, after you just got done saying that Peyton's going to probably be on the bench because this team's going to be able to run the football at him, what makes me think that Indy can go into Jacksonville and stop it and change the way they've been playing defense for the past 3 years? I mean, they haven't done it yet. Why will they do it here? So I got to back the Jags.
So do I. The worry is they're very inconsistent, Jacksonville, and that is a little bit of a concern. But I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but to me, I have not seen, they've got a great record, but I have not seen that same intimidation factor out of the Indianapolis offense this year that I've seen in past years. Now, I think part of that is that Joseph Adai has had a couple of nice games, but he's not Edgerrin James.
No,
and
he's not.
I don't think the teams fear this Colts squad as much as they have in the past. They're still a very good football team. They're obviously going to be in the playoffs. They could conceivably end up with the best record in the AFC, although that may not happen now. But I just don't see that they're as intimidating a squad to play, and I think they've lost their edge a little bit. And I would not be surprised if they take a couple more losses before the end of the season. I'm kind of looking at them as a team that could end up 12-4 and could be a first-round knockout in the AFC playoffs. I just don't think they're a dominant squad. Jacksonville should beat them here if they're on their game. Again, we have to hope the Jaguars don't go pull one of their Jekyll and Hyde deals where they turn into Hyde this week and get real ugly, because they are capable of doing that. But I'll tell you what, the Drew kid's really playing well. Garrard's been very serviceable. Why not? I like the Jaguars.
Most of the time that Hyde thing comes up when they're on the road. They're generally Mr. Jekyll at home, or Dr. Jekyll at home. I don't want to beat on this rushing thing, a rush defense, but they're last. The Colts are last in the NFL, 160 yards a game.
That's terrible.
It's just horrendous. Jacksonville's run for 522 yards the last 3 weeks. They've got two nice running backs. This first contest between these two, it was basically special teams play that cost the Jacksonville Jaguars a chance at the upset here. They missed 2 field goals, and they also there was also an 82-yard return for a touchdown. So take away any of that, make one of those field goals, take away that touchdown, that interception return, and the Jags could have won that contest. They're not. Most teams are not now intimidated by the Colts. I don't think Jacksonville ever has. I think they, even though their success has been more against the spread against Indy than straight up wins, I think they really they're not worried about playing this Colts.
The Jags have always played a very physical game, and their defense is very physical. They're very tough. They've always been very tough. That's the mindset of their coach and their whole defensive team. And the Colts are a finesse team. And that bothers finesse teams when you physical them up and knock them around a little bit. I like the Jags in this spot.
If you don't name Peyton Manning the MVP of the league, I think you're crazy. Because what would this team be like with an average quarterback under center? They wouldn't be winning these games. They'd be probably 7-5 right now instead of 10-2.
I got to tell you though,
Tomlinson might get a few votes, right?
There's going to be an argument
but
on San Diego.
Those two guys, it's pretty hard to make a case for anybody else.
I'd still say Peyton Manning because I think
you might be
as
right.
good as LT is, I love it. I don't know if you guys saw the Tonight Show the other night. LaDainian Tomlinson was on
No,
there.
I didn't see it.
And what a class act.
I didn't see it.
I hope he is the
He's
way
a nice
he comes
guy.
across, because what a decent guy. And we hear all about the crap that goes on off the field, but boy, this guy is just really something. He's special.
I
Well, I gotta tell you
hope he
something.
continues to do well in his pro football career, because as a mail boy, I don't know if you've seen one of those ESPN commercials, he has difficulty in putting up. He really, of course, having that dark helmet on doesn't help it either.
You know, it's kind of funny listening about him.
Those
just real
commercials
quickly.
are a riot.
He was a fullback in high school until his senior season. So they were talking about how he just wasn't recruited. And he hardly got any carries.
Nice job by the high school coach.
Great coaching. His freshman, sophomore, and junior year, he got about 3 carries per season.
Oh.
He was a blocker. LaDainian Tomlinson.
You think he's going back to his old high school coach for advice?
You know, and then if you are that coach, and there's been situations like that over the years, you got to live with that.
Oh, man.
You know, I'm the guy that didn't play him. You know,
That's a guy that can see talent.
The only guy that could stop LaDainian was his coach.
There you go.
We'll be right back. We have some best bets coming up.
Coming up next are Proline Best Bets, the biggest selection from today's show.
For my best bet this week, we're going to look at a game we talked about right here on the show. I'm going to take the points and the Wisconsin Badgers against their state rivals, Marquette. And I'll tell you what, the Proline offers, they just keep winning and winning and winning this year. I've got a great offer for you this week. It's my non-conference game of the year in college hoops. I'm going to also throw on 2 personal service plays. That's 3 big basketball games on Saturday. It's on my $20 power play line. Give me a call, 1-900-226-0410. 1-900-226-0410. 3 big games, including my non-conference game of the year.
My best bet won again last week here on Proline. That means for the year, on the shows on the USA Network and right here on the website, 19-6 for the year in my Proline contest and best bet selections. It's pretty good. That's 76%. I'll take that. I'm on fire right now. It's just been great the last few weeks. I've got 3 games, and the likelihood is you're going to have a winning day with these games. One of them is a conference basketball game of the year. All 3 plays are free. Make sure and call the number, 1-800-547-4224. And for this week's contest or best bet play, I'm going to go with Wisconsin, plus the points against Marquette. I'll go along with Glenn on that.
My best bet this week is going to the pro football, the gridiron. I'm trying to speak here. It's tough sometimes. But anyway, I'm going to go with the Jacksonville Jaguars plus the points over Indy. Now you know what these guys got to put up with. But anyway, you know, it's been an incredible run the past 5 or 6 weeks at Smash Mouth Sports. College football may be over the regular season, but how about a 25-11 run to close it out on weekends? 23-11 in college basketball with plays rated TKO or higher. Main events, how about a 4-0 run, including DePaul over Kansas last week outright? It's been an outstanding run. And this week, I've got my 2-team college basketball parlay of the year on my action report. I've also got my pro football game of the month and a code that gets those college bowls free. Get it all right now, $25. 1-900-868-3350.
I'm going to go with Baltimore and Kansas City under the total. I look for a very defensive game here. The offenses are going to be neutralized. Look for it to go under the total. This week, 1-877 Jim Feist. That's 1-877-546-3347 for 5 big releases, absolutely free. My Eastern Conference game of the year in the NBA, my college blowout of the month, and a big personal service play as well. Then on Sunday, I have a pro doubleheader, including my shocker. That's 5 big plays, 1-877 Jim Feist for a 5-0 weekend. We had a great time doing this show again, and it's even better when we know you're watching. And last week we had a lot of viewers and a lot of compliments. Thank you for that. We'll be back here again next week with more college and pro basketball. Pro football, we're going to talk about some bowl games as well. See you next week, and lots of winners for all of us.
Thanks for watching us this week, and be sure to catch Proline on the web next weekend, available Friday nights for more great insight.